Hello, everybody, and welcome back for another in our venue series of webinars. Last week, we had Rob and Chris kick off the first in this five webinar series for Venue 7. We are going to focus on this new software release, this gargantuan software release called Venue 7. We're gonna jump right into it today. If you guys have questions during the webinar today, please use the Q&A button down at the bottom of your Zoom, and we'll start collecting your questions. And there are guys in the background. Rob and Chris are here, as well as Chant and Ryan, a few other people, plenty of people here to answer your questions as we go along here. So, and they'll also collect some of the questions, and we'll ask them live right at the end here to get things going. All right, so we might as well just jump right to it here, because I'm not gonna kid you, I got a lot to cover today. So let's get going here. Let me do a little screen house cleaning here. Stand by for me. All right, here we go. All right, so this is today we're going to focus on some processing enhancements. A few things that are done inside console, etc., that are going to help you through a lot of things. I mean, there's some really, really cool stuff in this, so let's just get to it. So as with all things that we do here these days, this is focused on the unified platform. So everything I show you today is going to work on all systems in the Venue unified platform, certainly all S6L systems. So it applies to everything, and that's kind of our common mantra with that platform, right? Once we update one, we update them all. So that's how this is all going to work. Of course, all the interoperability is all there between these systems, and that will certainly be the case here, okay? So let's get right to it. The first thing I'm going to show you is something that just seems so simple, but yet it is so cool and effective. You just can't believe it. And we are now including a on-system guide. So if you take a look up there in the upper right-hand corner, there is a new tab, a new sub-tab to the Options tab called Help. How cool is that, right? So I'm going to run you through this just really quickly, give you a sense of what this is. This is all kinds of guides, etc., that are available right on the console. So let me switch over to this, see if I can get this going. There we go. Close this guy out. And over here and here. So this is what you're going to see in that help menu when you boot up your console. Now there's all kinds of cool stuff in there. So for instance, if we go to the S6L system guide or installation guide, you'll see all kinds of documentation there. The S6L live recording guide, where you could see, you know, setups, things like that. Here, you could even go down to the S6L handbook and look through this, all kinds of configuration help here. You can even go to the resources tab and use these codes with your phone to go directly to tutorials, all kinds of stuff. This is positively an excellent thing that we've done here. And I'm just going to be dead serious with you. I had no idea it was coming. It was a big surprise for me to see it come into the console, but I absolutely love it. I think this is really, really going to help you guys out here. Going to be really, really fun and helpful. Let's get back to this. All right, so the next thing I'm going to take you through are some output EQ enhancements. All right, so the first thing to note here is that we now have a third octave available on every single output of the console. So regardless of system size, regardless of what console you're on, every auxiliary, every matrix, every group, even the left-right master, has a third octave available to it. All right, so no additional upgrades or processing needed there. Every one of them is going to have it. And of course, you guys all know that we have parametric on every output now as well. So you have a third octave and a full 8-band parametric available on every single output on the console. And if that wasn't enough, you also now have high pass and low pass filters available to you on the console as well, on all of these outputs as well, which is really kind of a cool thing, especially for mixing music, etc., where you can do some cool stuff. Matter of fact, maybe I'll take you over to the console and show you that for a second here. Let's go. I got to turn some cameras on here, I think. Stand by for me. And get this going. I forgot to do this. This. All right, there we go. So we'll go to this kind of routine here. Yeah, that looks good. All right, so as I mentioned, we have third octaves available on every output now. And of course, one of the things this means, obviously, for our work in live sound is we can do these like these Abbey Road filter sets for auxiliaries, right? If we want to shape something going into reverbs, etc., we can do that really easily now, and as well as use the third octaves if we need to, right? So here, remember, if we want to get to a third octave, all we have to do is attention and output, and then press on the third octave button here in the TFT, and the third octave comes up available here for us to operate, right? These are all the filters on the EQ itself. We can also get to them here on the CKM, right? We can get to the parametric here as well as the third octave here, right? If we change over to the third octave, now this is the third octave available to us, so we don't necessarily have to use our faders to do that. We can just switch back and forth and use those, right? So really cool, all available here. And let me get back to this now and switch over to this output so I can show you this. So, one of these things that we can do on these outputs, obviously, is put in the, build something like an Abbey Road filter, which, previously this would have taken a plugin, required a plugin to be able to do this, but now we can just literally high pass and low pass very quickly here, get it up about there, let's say, and up about there, let's say, and then put in one of these mid-band filters, something about here, and voila, there you go. Nice Abbey Road filter for you to be able to use on your pre-reverbs or pre-delays, anything like that. Really cool stuff. And of course, you can use that to do any of your other kind of filtering as well. If you want to do high pass and low pass on your PA drives or anything like that, you have that all available to be done now. Okay? All right, let's go back to this. A lot of button pushing today. Woo. All right, let's talk really quickly here about mix functionality on EQ and dynamics. This is really cool. Excuse me. This is really fun to play with. So if you'll notice now on an input page, you have mix capabilities, parallel mix capabilities for EQ, expander gate, and compression, right? So all of these little areas here are now percentages. So if you wanted to do a 50-50 compression, parallel compression on a given input, it's as simple as just dialing it in at 50% and setting that compressor, right? Same thing applies for a gate. And this is, we don't talk about this kind of thing very often in live sound circles because it's been very difficult to do. But in the studio, this is not an uncommon thing to do parallel gating, where, let's say, for instance, on a drum, you might have a drum, which I'm going to actually try to demonstrate for you today, which is a little mushy or a little soft sounding, and you want to give it some impulse, you want to give it some impact. So you actually take a noise gate and put a very chippy gate on it, something that's very quick, very transient, and just add that in with the natural sound, the original sound, and you get something that's a little more transient on that drum and still have it sound very natural still, right? As far as the equalizer, using this parallel setting for an equalizer actually kind of creates a scalar. That's kind of what we call it, a scalar. So, you could actually adjust this up and down, and it will take all of the filters in the EQ and adjust them by a given ratio there. So it's just a fantastic way to work and adjust your filter sets and just kind of really dial in your tonality. As you'll see here, it really works great on outputs. Like if you're doing system EQ and using this scalar, man, it is fantastic for that kind of work. This parallel compression concept is also available to all of the outputs as well, auxiliaries, groups, master bus, etc. So, I mean, think about this now. If you want to just create very quick parallel compression on your master bus, which has typically been very difficult to achieve in a live sound console, you have it at your disposal right here. Now use the onboard compressor and use the blend function or the mix function to be able to create that. All right, so I'm going to take you back to the console and we're going to do a little audio work here, hopefully. And let's see here. I got to get back to this, I believe. And yeah, this looks about right. So, we're going to get through this quick. I'm going to do this very quick for you. Just try to give you some sense of what this can do. So I got this bass and drum set up here. This is a very loose drum sound. This is not your tight, impulsy, punchy drum sound by any stretch of the imagination. But we're going to use some of these parallel concepts to kind of punch things up and get it to sound a little better, okay? So let me just do a little audio test here to make sure you have this. And it sounds like you do. All right, so let's, I'm just going to pick a couple things here to highlight. So let's start with the snare drum, obviously. That's a big, fat, kind of round snare sound. So let me get to that and get set up here where I can adjust it. All right, so I'm going to start this one. All right, so that's fully gated. Let me get you to there, which you can hear, right? And we could do it this way if we wanted to do it and use it in this sound. But let's assume that this guy maybe wants to keep this really kind of loose sound, but we want to kind of create a little more punch with it, right? So I might even slow this release down even punchier, right? Something like that, and then blend it back in. Right, so now we got a much punchier snare, even though we got this kind of wide open snare drum sound. So here's out, and here's blended. Right about there. Okay, so you can do this on, all of the drums if you want to do it. I've set up a number of them here to be able to do it and give you an A/B. The other thing that we might want to do is do some parallel compression on the bass, right? So let's have a listen to that. So here's our bass, got a little bit of EQ and high pass, low pass in there. And I've just set up a 60% parallel compression here. So I'm going to put that in. All right, so yeah, I've got this about 50-50 limiting here, so we'll go ahead and stick it in circuit. This might be a little tough to hear over the internet, but we'll give it a go. Yeah, you can hear it there. It gets a little wilier without it in. Keep all that kind of nasty grunge up there in the top, but kind of control the bottom end now. Okay, so these are just really quick examples that I kind of threw together here, but I'm going to let you hear the drum kit this way. I've actually got it running through a group and used this process to parallel group as well, and then also done a little bit of parallel compression on the mix bus. So for instance, if we were to look at the mix bus here, you can see that I have the possibility of it there being a 50-50 compression there as well. So let's listen to it with it all in or out just to see if we're having the desired effect here. All right, so. All right, so that is dry now. That's no mixed processing, and then we're just going to add in the mix here. So that's with the processing, and you hear it punches it right up. Don't let the red light sweat you there. I've got 6 dB of buffer built into that meter there. So. All right, so that's out. This is in. All right, so I hope you're hearing that okay and getting a sense of what that's all about. All right, so it's really, really fun. Oh, actually, the one other thing I was going to show you was the scaling. Let's do that. So if I go back to that main output there, you see that EQ, but it's actually completely off, right? And if I put that EQ in, let's see if I can get it here. Oops, here. All right, so we're just going to, that EQ, even though it's in circuit and it looks like the filter is there, I've got 0% of it being used. So I'm just going to add it back in now. So this is with the scaled EQ, and I'll bypass it all here. There, the whole thing kind of flattens out there, right? And I can play. All right, so pretty cool stuff. Like I said, using that scaler on system EQ is actually really, really cool. I think that's where I'm going to end up using it as much as anywhere, but it's still a great thing. Also, keep in mind that any of these functions that I've talked about here are addressable with events as well. So you could set up continuous controllers for a fader, where you could maybe use a fader to control that that scaling event, anything like that. You can do all kinds of stuff with that, with the events. Obviously, we have a few things that we're going to show with events today. All right, let's carry on here. Let's see here. Let's go back to this and get on to our next thing. All right, big meters. Yeah, this is a fun one here. All right, so we've got this capability now on the console to change over the meters to a full-length meter on the console. And we have a number of ways to do this. You can actually look at a big high-resolution meter on any input or output, and we've got a ton of different ways to do this. Okay, so let's get back over to the console there. Actually, we're gonna go to camera here. That's what I want to do. Let's go to this guy. All right, so you can kind of see a side view of the console here. I'm going to get in, let's see, maybe I'll do this. I'll get to this mode. Yeah, that looks pretty good. And I'm going to, actually, let me get back to this. I'm going to mute this real quick. All right, so I'm just going to start some random meters here. Now we have the ability to pick and choose what we want to have big meters at any given time, right, with some keystroke commands. But the main way we can do it is just using a swipe, right? So if we just swipe down, we can actually make a meter big, right in front of us. If we're done with that, we just swipe it back up, all right? We can also use the default and the find key to do parts of this as well. If we go default and swipe, it'll take all meters, all input and all output meters across the console as the big meters, right? As you can see here. So we can get back off of that. We can also do just particular output types if we want to do it, and we would just do, or input types if we just do default and, oops, did it the wrong way there. If we do default find and then swipe, it'll only do that given output type, right? So now we're just looking at output meters. In this case, I'm looking at group meters against short input meters, right? So very, very handy, a really great way to look at it. Now, you can also do this with events as well, and you might have noticed I was kind of reaching over to the my iPad, my function pad here to be able to do this. I've got it set up over there where I can go all big meters. Oops. Get out of this. I can go all big meters or not. I can do just input big meters if I want to do just input, just the group's big meters. Or I could even have subsets of meters that I might want to do. Maybe I just got 4 meters here that I want to possibly go into big meters to get a view of. Well, I just do that. I have it preset, pre-built into the event where I can just look at those 4 particular meters. So another thing you can do, and I think I'm going to work this way a bunch when I do this because I think it's going to work really good, is to combine big meter events with solos. So I've got it set up where if I hit an input solo, it's actually going to change the metering on the input to post fader and change the metering on the group that I'm sending to pre-fader and put it in a big meter, right? So it would look something like this if I do it. Let's see here. I'm going to get things down here a little bit where I can actually show this. So if you were looking at this output meter right now, I'll pull it down so you can see it. You can see that I really, gain structure-wise, it looks kind of okay, right? It doesn't look like I'm overdriving that bus. But if I actually solo up an input and put my inputs in post-fader metering and that meter in pre-fade metering, meaning right at the entry of the bus, I can see where the problem is, see? So now I've soloed, the group meter has gone to pre-fader, and I can see that I'm actually overdriving the input of the meter. And I'm all in post-fader here, so I can actually see what some of these levels are that are driving that bus and turn them down a little bit and get that bus gain structure back in order. Once I come out of solo, then the meter goes back, these go back to their regular metering, and we are off to the races, okay? So you can build all kinds of stuff like this in with events. There's all kinds of really cool things to do, and big meters is a really, really helpful piece of this for sure. I'm really excited about this. I got a feeling I'm going to spend a lot of time, certainly with my output meters and big meters, but it's just a really, really handy thing to have at your disposal. All right, let's go back here. Yeah, we're kind of whipping right through this. This is going to be good. We'll have a nice quick webinar today, hopefully. Let's see what we got next. Oh yeah, not to give away the show, but we now have heat for the unified platform, right? And I'm going to give you a little background on what heat is if you're not familiar with it. This all emanated from a gentleman named David Hill, who started a company called Cranesong, right? So I'm going to give you a little background on this just to give you some idea of where this came from. I'm sure if you've been in venue land for any length of time, then you understand what Phoenix, that plugin, has meant to this console and this platform. But it's been a very similar thing for heat for Pro Tools, and it all started with Dave in 1995 when he created Cranesong and launched some of their hardware products that had a lot of these processes in it. It had the head process, the heat process, etc. And if you ever used any of his hardware, you know the quality of this stuff. It's just outstanding sounding hardware, and he's brought a lot of that right back into digital for us. So Heat was designed for Pro Tools and launched in 2010. It was kind of a preamp emulation that gives you the ability to do a lot of cool stuff in terms of sound quality and saturation. Phoenix 1 was available for venue, as you guys all know, in TDM format. It was a big, I would dare to say probably the most popular plugin we had on the original venue series of consoles. And then, of course, Phoenix 2 came available with AAX DSP format for S6L and for Pro Tools HDX as well in the AAX DSP format. And now we see Heat available to us on every input in the venue system, right? So this is just an outstanding thing to have on the console. I mean, it's, we don't get any additional latency. We have it available to every input. We have the ability to create tape emulation or more saturation style characteristics like you would see in tube mics or tube circuitry. All of that is available to every output or every input on the console. So let's take a look at that. We'll go ahead and we'll keep using our little drum thing to demonstrate here. I'll go back to, let's go back to here. Let's see here, 1 second. Oh yeah, we want to take a look at this. That's right. We want to go here. And we want to take a look at what's happening harmonic-wise in these guys. So I've got 2 channels up here that just have some tone running into it, just some 1K tone to be able to show this. And depending on what type of saturation or compression you're looking for here is dependent upon which way you turn the heat knob. You can kind of see it here in the, I'll get my cursor over there where you can see it. Come on, there we go. You can kind of see it here. We can go left or we can go right with this knob. And of course, left is going to give us left is going to give us much more of a tape style emulation, tape drive emulation. And if we turn it to the right, it's going to give us much more of a triode, tube triode type of sound, something a little edgier, a little brighter for sure, whereas the tape will be a little fatter bottom, a little tighter mid-range. And then on top of it, there's a tone control that works in conjunction with that drive. So again, you have that available on every channel. I'm just going to show you the two examples of it to drive home exactly what's happening here. So the left channel we're looking at here, the right channel we're looking at here, or the turned right channel we're looking at here. And I'm just going to run this noise up into the Smart. And you can see this is the tape emulation, right? Which has a first an odd order harmonic in it, right? Which is characteristic of tape compression and tape saturation. And if we look at the right side, turn it to the right now, you'll see that the harmonic structure is way more complex, right? There's more harmonics in it. This is going to be the word I hear a lot of mix engineers use when they get this sound is it's kind of gluey, it kind of glues things together when you have this kind of process on something. It'll glue its sound together. So you have a tape saturation or tube saturation emulation available on every input. No additional latency, just comes kind of free of charge in terms of latency, but is available on all your inputs. So I got a similar situation set up here where we'll just take this little bass and drum mix, and I'm just going to turn. I've done a similar kind of thing where I've just added some heat to a few channels, just to try, which would be similar to the approach I would take in the studio if I was doing it, and you can just listen to the difference in it. Okay, so let me get it up where you can hear it here. All right, so we still got all of our little parallel processing on there, and I'm going to do this just to give you some sense of when it's in and out. So you should see those drums there, and if I do this, now the heat process is on there. So if you see the little flames in the screen there, that means heat is on. And if they go away, that means heat is off. Using plugins like this or these kind of processes is, as I teach in all of my clinics, this is about nuance, right? You want to be very disciplined with this. You can get out of hand with it very quickly, just exactly like you can in recording analog in the studio. Where things can get overdriven sounding very, very quickly. So you want to be judicious with this, but you can tell just from that, just that little bit of added life and punch to it is kind of what the analog thing is all about. So it's fantastic to have this available to you on the console. I'll give you one more round here. You can hear it just kind of sucks back a little bit there. And then when the process is on there, it just kind of glues the whole thing together and brings it forward. Okay. All right. Cool stuff. So I'm sure you guys are going to have some questions about that, so bring them on. All right, let's move on to our last little topic here, I believe. I'll try to save plenty of time for Q&A here. All right, so yeah, so heat is available in for all the inputs on the console. This is just kind of the lineage of it there. It's pretty exciting to have this in the console. This is something we talked about doing in the early days of the original Venue console. We just did not have the DSP headroom to be able to do that, but we have tons of that kind of headroom here in Venue with S6L. So really cool stuff. All right, I just thought I would throw in a couple of little extra nuggets for you here, because as you know, right, this is a 5-webinar series on this software release, and there's so many things that have been, that have happened in terms of just additions to the console. So I just thought I would throw in a few extras here for you to see today. So the first one is you have an EQ pre-dynamics option now available to you. This had not been the case before, where you could not adjust whether the equalizer was pre or post the onboard dynamics, but you do have that availability now. There we go. So if you'll notice, if I get to an input here, you have that ability right up here at the top of the equalizer. You can put that in, and now your equalizer is before your gate and your compressor, okay? Or it's before dynamics, okay? So you have that availability on S6L now. Next one is make stereo and make mono from the control surface. This one's really just kind of a no-brainer that you should be able to do this, and I think we got a really good way of doing this now. So I'm going to go back to the overhead camera here, and I'm actually going to zoom in a little bit, see if I can allow you to see this. Let's just take this on a little bit. So to be able to do this, you've got to be in config mode. So notice I'm in config mode here, and if I just multi-select two channels, any two channels, see, I won't do that. I'll do these two. So if I just take these two channels and multi-select them, notice that I have an extra option that comes up here in the TFT, right, that says make stereo, right? So if I press that, now I have that channel in stereo here based on these two channels. Obviously, I can also break stereo if I want as well. If I select a stereo channel, now this turns into break stereo, engage it, and now I'm back to the two mono channels. Okay, so really easy way to do it. You can do multiple channels at once, I believe. I haven't tried it yet, but if it's like the regular make stereo, you can. So you could select an entire bank of matrices and say make stereo, and it will just make them, it will collate them and make them all stereo for you, make you multiple stereo versions of it at the same time. But this will save you having to use the trackball and the mouse to quickly make something stereo. Okay. Back here, what do we got next? Oh, this is a good one. Show channel name in the strips on the console. All right, so this is a good one. Let me get over there where I can show you that. All right, so we want to go here. Do this. And I think if I get my cursor right down here, I can do this, yes. So you can see that there is actually abbreviated names in the color chiclet now on the inputs, right? So this, again, is going to be really handy for you. You can see this in inputs, outputs. They all have it available to you here to be able to help you navigate those channels, especially with the channel counts that we're talking today. This is going to be a really helpful thing. So you guys did a great job of trying to get this in and get it done. It was really cool. All right, and back for our final one, I believe. System ID and serial number in your venue software. Now you might be saying to yourself, really, Robert, is this a feature? Is this really a feature? Promise me, I promise you, it is a feature, and it's an important one. So I want you guys to take this seriously when I show you this, and please try to do this on your systems, especially you guys that are for sound reinforcement vendors, etc. This is going to be a very important move for you to be able to do. So when you boot up in 7.0, you're going to get this prompt, and if you click on review, it's going to take you directly to this page where you can see an area now to enter your serial number and your system ID for all of the components, right? So right now I have engine selected. I would enter those numbers there. I would go to my control surface. Is that where I'm at? Yeah, control surface, do the same thing, enter the numbers there, and any of my I/O devices. And the reason that you want to do this, guys, is primarily because if you end up with an event or some sort of service call or service event on the console and they ask you to send logs, right? Then usually those service guys are going to say to you, okay, well, I need your system ID, I need your serial numbers, all of that kind of information, which, as we all know, especially when you're out on road or even in part of a big install, getting those numbers can be troublesome. It can be hard. They might be in the back of a rack. They might be whatever. Hard to access. if you enter them in the software here, they will automatically come with the log files, right? So they won't need to ask for you. They're just going to say, send me the log files. All the gear information will be included in those log files now, and it'll really streamline that process. So I encourage you to take that seriously and put them in there when you have the opportunity to do it. Okay. And on that note, we are to the Q&A portion. 37 minutes in. That might be a record for me. So I hope you guys enjoyed all of this stuff. I hope you have lots of juicy questions. I cannot wait to hear your questions. Let's get it going. Dudes, have we got any questions from the folks?
Yeah, we got a few, Robert. First is the release date for Venue 7. And although we can't officially say, we can say it is by end of year.
Yeah, that's correct. My understanding of it is that it will be in this quarter at some point. Probably later in the quarter than earlier. But given that we're talking about all this stuff, you can rest assured it's going to come out this year. That's for sure.
Cool. We had a number of questions about heat and that. So one of them is heat available on groups as well?
It is not currently. It's only on inputs at this stage. And I know what you're thinking, because I've used it that way in, not in Pro Tools, but we've done something similar in Pro Tools, where a lot of times you'll use the heat process on the input stage and then switch over to using Phoenix on the output stage. And that's what I would encourage you to do here if you want to do that. You'll have a very, very similar result using Phoenix at your group stage as you would using heat at the input stage. So it's a very similar style process. So obviously that's a plug-in, but remember, we have the ability to delay compensate plug-in inserts at the output stage. So not really a latency worry there. And just think of all the DSP headroom you're saving here by not having to instantiate Phoenix at the input stage, right? You can rely on heat to do a lot of that work now, and then move right on to the output stage and use Phoenix there, and actually kind of use it as much like if we were recording stems in the studio or something like that. You could drive right into that tape compression and get different effects and results with it. Okay, so that's what I would encourage you to do. Just switch over to using Phoenix on your outputs and use heat on the input side. Cool.
How many channels of heat can you have on S6L now?
As many inputs as you have. So wherever you have an input, you have the heat process available to you.
And is heat, let's see, pre or post direct out?
Ooh, that's a good question. I don't know the firm answer for that. I will have to check that out. I got to believe, maybe Ryan can jump in on that. Do you know, Ryan? I mean, I haven't checked that. Do you know?
Sure. Well, it depends, right? Because your direct out pickoff could be from anywhere. Could be post fader, could be insert return.
Hang on. I think I misinterpreted the question then. It's definitely going to be pre-direct out, right? I was thinking the input direct button.
Yeah. Input direct button will skip over heat. But yeah, regarding direct out, it depends on where your pickoff is. Obviously, if your pickoff is post fader, heat will be before that. If it's insert return, heat will be before that. If you have top of channel, that is pre-heat. And where that becomes valuable is if you've recorded things like virtual sound check, you can still adjust your heat settings when you're playing back.
You're in playback, yeah. Yep, that's exactly where I was going with that.
Yeah, that's pretty key, is that you can not only hear it on inputs, but also on virtual sound check playback.
Yeah, you can refine it in virtual sound check, which is awesome. What else you got for me, fellas?
All right, let's see here. We have, let's see, talking about the dynamics placement. Can you give an example of why or when you would want EQ pre-dynamics? More of a mix approach?
Yeah, well, I mean, there are times where you might want to do some, especially in live sound, might want to do some corrective EQ before a compression to make the detector circuit of the compressor not go so crazy. I mean, places that I can think of like that would be, certainly for audience mics, maybe even for vocal mics, where you might want to high pass it before it gets to the compressor, right, to get some of that low frequency gunk out of the detector circuit. So that's certainly one element of it. I personally, I don't think I would want to EQ before a noise gate you know, because then EQ is affecting threshold, all kinds of things there. But you know, that's first example I can think of is just trying to keep a detector circuit clean on a compressor.
Cool. Let's see, we got another one about the dynamics. Based on the pre-EQ feature mentioned, is the dynamics order changeable? Compressor gate to gate compressor.
I do not believe it is. Ryan, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think the compressor gate relationship stays the same, right?
Correct. Yeah, gate is before compressor. Ultimately, if you wanted to add something out of that order, it'd be quite simple to add a gate in the plug-in insert, and then you now have a gate after your channel compressor.
Right, right. Yeah, the plug-in option gives you all kinds of options there to go in conjunction with it.
Cool. One more came in about heat. Does heat get scoped along with other pre-functions in snapshots?
Ooh, I'm glad you mentioned that because I forgot to mention it. Thank you so much for bringing that up. Yes, indeed. Heat is part of the pre-scope in snapshots. So if you have an input scoped and pre-scoped, it will carry your heat settings with it. Okay. So yes, yeah, storable and recallable as the pre-scope.
We should also point out that every heat input is snapshotable different. You know, it's variable as opposed to the way it works in Pro Tools.
Correct. Yeah, that's actually a good point. Didn't think of that. Yeah, we have some automation capability that they don't there. Yeah, that's right.
And you do it in events.
Right. Thanks for saving me on the webinar, fellas. Yes, of course, you can. Heat is also controllable as an event and can also control things as an event as well, where you could you can set up some very interesting scenarios there with continuous controllers. So yes, heat is part of the event process as well. That event list is getting long, boys. I'm telling you, there's a lot of good stuff there.
Yeah. That's all the questions we have right now, Robert.
Right on. Well, I hope you guys have enjoyed this. Maybe I'll just chime in with my fellow brethren overseas there. Chris, Rob, you guys got anything you want to add to this before I give you the nice promo for next week?
No, but thanks very much, Robert. That was a great demo of what we got coming along. We got so much stuff to kind of squeeze in. That
I know.
Amazing. One little thing I wanted to mention is actually the kind of little names at the bottom of the GUI. It's great on the snapshots as well, and on the overview. I don't know if you can show that. That really helps if when you're programming your snapshots. It's really great that you've got the little name at the bottom of the screen. Yeah,
because that is challenging in snapshots to be able to find the input that you want to scope.
You're trying to remember, or maybe you'll touch the fader, or you'll solo it, or something to find it.
Yeah, exactly right.
Now it's got the little name at the bottom, so that's spectacular.
Well, Rob, tell us what you're covering next week. I'll give you the lead in here.
Right. So next week, carrying on with basically on what you've been doing this week. Bus to bus is something that we're going to do. We're going to have a little look at using the matrix to form a mix minus.
Right. Great.
That's the basic stuff. Chris, have I missed anything? What else are we going to? Of course, there's going to be a few little nuggets as you did today.
Right on. Well, we'll just keep plowing through this, man. I mean, we still got a lot to cover. We're only two webinars in. We got 3 to go for this one software release. It's really quite remarkable. So,
in all the years that you and me have been doing this, Robert, this is just the most remarkable software release ever, isn't it?
No comparison. Yeah.
Next week we'll also have some Dan Dugan integration.
Oh yeah, post fader insert. I knew I was missing something. Thank you, Chris. Post fader insert. So there's a whole new architecture to the way that we can insert plugins on a channel, pre and post fader. We'll show you some kind of Dan Dugan stuff, maybe some mastering stuff around post fader inserts. So
beautiful. Yeah, sounds great. All right, well, I guess we'll pull the ripcord here, guys. Thanks very much for tuning in. Of course, you can look for the rebroadcast on the Avid website. I'm sure it'll get posted here very soon if you need to keep up on these. And keep coming back. We got a lot more to show you over the next 3 webinars. I'll tell you, there's a lot to go yet. So thanks for tuning in. We'll be in touch with you guys.